everybody, let's talk about how to build a career straight out of college, okay? This is the title of an article that appeared here. Let's go down this article and see if they've got it right, okay? Now, my two YouTube channels talk about careers, they talk about how to pass interviews and this sort of thing, but this article raises a very important issue, an issue that I know a lot of young people are struggling with today, which is how to get a job right out of school, okay, right out of college or university or wherever you're taking your education, usually post-secondary education. Now, there has always been a huge gulf between education and the real world, okay, working in the workforce. And it seems to me over the last 25, 30 years, this gulf has gotten even wider. And what I regularly see every day on comments on my YouTube channel is that there's a lot of young people that feel that school has not prepared them to get a job. And I would totally agree with this. I've actually gone back into the university environment in the last few years just to do some teaching on the side and stuff like this. And it's amazing. It's absolutely amazing how out of touch, generally speaking, education is and educational institutions are with the private sector and even the public sector of the real world, like the workforce. And so as a result, they are ill-equipped to advise students of how to get a job. And I feel that they do a bad job of this. And that's the feedback I get too from a lot of students and people that have recently graduated. And certain recent events in 2020 and 2021 have not helped this. Now, here's the deal. There's a few uncomfortable truths that the educational institutions don't like to admit. And that is, generally speaking, education on its own doesn't result in you getting a job. It's just that simple. You need more than just education to get a job. And this is something that they reluctantly, will acknowledge, but downplay tremendously because it's very embarrassing for them. This is something that has developed certainly over the last 10 years, if not a little bit longer. You need more than just education. Now, this isn't all bad news, okay? If you are a recent graduate, okay, this is not all bad news because there's certain things you can do. Now, first of all, if you're still in school, okay, I would highly recommend that you check out their internship programs if they have internship programs in your school, okay? Internship programs are generally things where the school has partnered with companies, usually in the private sector. And what they'll do is they've come up with a sort of mutually beneficial arrangement where the school will send their students to do work in a private company, okay, for free. So these students are essentially working in a private company, doing work for free, and they don't get paid for it generally, which obviously benefits the business, right? But then in return, those students are receiving real-world experience that they can put on their resumes and say, like, look, I'm not totally green out of school. I have been in the workforce. I have been on the inside of companies in my chosen industry. And, so you're not getting a totally green graduate. You're getting somebody that's actually been working and has worked in the actual business environment, and they have some soft skills, so they know what they're getting into, and they're tried and true, and it even gives the student a chance to get letters of recommendation or references from within the industry and be able to do a bit of networking. So there are certain advantages there. So it's a mutually beneficial arrangement. It benefits the company because they get cheap labor, and it benefits the students because they get a something they can put on their resume and advance their career. Okay, and the school likes it because then they're able to advertise the fact that they also provide internships for their students. So in addition to giving you a piece of paper, they also provide you with a good chance of getting a job at an organization that you've already sort of done some work for. Okay, because a lot of those organizations, if they need to hire somebody, they're going to look first at the people that have already worked for them in the internship program, because those candidates are known quantities, so they're much less risky. You've already gotten a free sample of what you're going to get if you hire them as an employee. Okay, so I would definitely look into that. But coming back to the larger issue here, okay, talking about how to build a career straight out of college, I think one of the problems with this is that the educational system and the certainly the private sector have polar opposite cultures. Okay, now to understand what I mean by this is that think of the formal educational system. They want people to conform. Okay, they want students to conform, to follow rules, to be standardized. They want to test everybody in the same way. They want to organize students into classes that are all taught in lockstep. So they want everyone to essentially shut up, sit down, and follow the program and follow instructions. Okay, it's a very conformist type environment. And if you were to go against the grain, if you were to break rules, if you were not to conform, you tend to not come out on top. It tends to work to your detriment. Okay, so this is the environment that people are in when they go to school. And after X many years of this, they tend to come out being very good conformists. They tend to be people that follow the rules, that tend to have to ask permission for everything. They tend to not want to go against the grain. Now, I'm not saying that all these traits are bad universally, but what I am saying is that when you're faced with the problem of getting a job, okay, this is a situation that's completely different. It's 180 degrees polar opposite. You're now trying to elevate yourself above the crowd. You're competing with potentially all your former classmates. You're in a situation where they're not giving you instructions on what to do, really. And if you did the same thing as everyone else, how would you expect them to select you? How would you elevate yourself above the crowd so that you stand out? You can't do that by doing exactly the same thing that everyone else is doing. You have to do something different and better. So here we get a situation that the educational system is fundamentally and culturally opposed to. It's the opposite thing for what they deal with normally. So as a result, on my 2 YouTube channels, every day I get comments from people that complain how ill-equipped they are and how ill-equipped they have been by their school to enter the workforce and to find a job. And it's no surprise to me because for the reasons I've just explained. So this is a big problem. Now, for the person coming out of college, okay, or coming out of school, any type of school, whether you're coming out of university with a PhD, or you're coming out of like a trade school, something like that, or you're coming out of high school, or you're coming out of university with a bachelor degree or a master's degree, whatever stage you're at, okay, the prospect of getting a job is it's a little bit different from what it has been in the past, okay? And in addition to taking advantage of any internship opportunities that you have at your school, okay, probably the biggest realization, the biggest bit of advice I would have for people in this situation is to recognize that getting a job is essentially a free-for-all, okay? There isn't one standard way of doing it. And in fact, the way it works is that the more common the method that you use to get a job, the worse your chances of succeeding in it. Because the goal is to elevate yourself above all the other candidates. And so, for example, the most common way, or at least the default way that a lot of students try to get a job is by responding to job ads. And I've talked about this extensively on my channels. First of all, know that getting a job ad is not the most common way of getting a job. It might seem like that's a standard way. It actually isn't. It's actually a very poor way of getting a job. the best way of getting a job, in my opinion, based on my experience, having basically risen to the level of CEO. I'm a former CEO, and being a business consultant and management consultant, and having taught in universities, including teaching recruiters in university, in HR programs and business programs, is you need initiative. You need to not do what everybody else is doing. Okay, you need to show initiative, and this is something that a lot of people don't realize. Another surprising fact is that the standard thing that, as I've already mentioned, that schools and universities don't like to admit, that education in itself doesn't usually result in you getting a job. In addition to that, employers look for experience. Okay, you don't necessarily have had to have gotten the best marks, but it helps if you have experience. But by far and away, the best thing that they look for is for you to have initiative, is for you to have the right attitude. Okay, so social skills and soft skills go a long way here. And if you have that, great. If you're an extrovert and you have the ability to talk to people and stuff, that's great. If you're an introvert, don't despair, because you too can do this. It doesn't require necessarily talking to people and be a whiz at it, but the ability to use social networking, the ability to contact people using social networking, contact employers, the right people in the right organizations that are near you, being able to talk to them, being able to say, hello, I'm here, and I love your company. I know you do this, and I know you do this, and I think that's really awesome. And if ever you're looking for somebody that you want to hire to do this, let me know, because I'm very interested. You know, your attitude alone and your agreeableness and your willing to reach out to them will be the reason that you get hired. Okay? Are you necessarily the smartest? Are you necessarily, the best person who has the best marks? No, but you're the one that reached out to them. You're the one that took the initiative and knew how to approach them and present yourself. And that alone will make them look at you first before they look at anyone else. And unless there's any major red flags with you, you're in. And that's something they don't really teach you in school. They don't teach you how to do that because they don't want students having that attitude. They don't want students going outside standard procedure. They don't want students bending the rules or making up their own rules. That's frowned upon. But that's what it takes to get above the crowd in the real world. You don't have to be the smartest or the best. You just have to have the initiative, and you have to have the right attitude. And that's what tends to count a lot of times. Obviously, there's going to be exceptions to this, but generally speaking, that's how it works for the vast majority of jobs. And just to complete what I was saying before, most people don't get jobs by applying for posted job ads. Instead, they get jobs through networking. And that does not mean that you have to be an extrovert. That does not mean you have to know a million people. It just means you have to have the initiative. You have to know social networking. You have to know how companies operate, and you have to have the right attitude. And all that can be learned pretty simply. So if you're a new graduate and you're finding the prospect of getting a job intimidating, confusing, and discouraging, check out my YouTube channel. Not just mine. There's a lot of resources online, but this particular way of getting a job is something I've talked about extensively, and I'm not the only one. So take heart. There's ways around this seeming catch-22 situation of no one will hire me because I don't have experience, and I can't get experience because no one will hire me. There's easy ways around it to break that deadlock. So that's my 2 cents on this. I haven't really covered much of what's in the article, but it basically echoes some of this. And that would be my advice for people that are coming out of school these days. Certainly check out the services that your school has when it comes to employment. They might have an employment office or employment services. That's a start. But don't stop there. There's a lot further you can go, and you will often need to go further to get a job and have your career take off. So thank you very much for your attention. I hope you found this useful. You guys are awesome. I hope to see you on the next video. So take care.